Hey everyone, John Kennedy and Michael Scott here. We are coming to you today as a follow-up from the prior 3 videos we did, part of this mini-series about a recession. And Michael, I don't know, man, we got to come up with like maybe a cool name. I liked Q&A with your CFA, but so if anyone's listening to this right now, maybe in the comment section, be nice to us, but in the comment section, maybe give us an idea for what we can name these recordings, these sessions that we do. It could also be like famous and funny names. I don't know. We can do something with like Michael Scott, John Kennedy. What do you think?
Finance and historical figures and TV actors.
Yes. We're
Something along those
close.
lines.
We're close. We can words. We're really close. I feel good about it. So today we really just wanted to come to you guys and address this idea. You know, everyone's hearing the R word, recession, in the news, and certainly from us. You know, we want to over communicate about what that even means, what a recession is, what we kind of see going on right now. And if you've watched the last 2 videos that Michael's done, he's done a fantastic job explaining that stuff. And today it's more of a focus on, okay, well, if or when we are in one, what are some of the proactive things that you or we could be doing as a result of that? And you know, we spend a lot of time talking with clients and also internally talking with one another about the fact that, listen, there are things we can control in life and there are things that we can't control. We can't control what the stock market does. We can't individually control what's going on in the economy. There's news and things flying at us at all times. And so we're trying to process and distill all this information. And sometimes it can be just nerve-wracking because it's just all the stuff we can't control. And, you know, we've identified through conversation that there are 2 things that you have total and complete control over. Michael, do you want to touch on the first one? I really like, you know, this idea of one of the things you have control over is savings and spending. And so, Michael, why don't we just kind of start unpacking that? What do you think?
Yeah, let's start there. So, one of the great things about savings and spendings is you have control over it at every point in your life. Whether you are saving for retirement, whether you're in retirement, whether you're working, raising a family, no matter what you're doing, you have control over what you spend and how much you save. And that may not be any more important than it is during a recession, because we all know that when you think about recessions, a lot of things we think of as job losses. So hopefully that doesn't happen to any of us watching this or anyone anywhere. But in the fear that does, you really have to take a step back and say, what am I spending money on, and should I be saving more? And John, you brought up this point before, like, you may have a budget in your normal times, you may have a cash flow for normal times, but do you have an emergency budget in place? And it's not necessarily your emergency fund. We should all have that emergency fund, but let's say we go into a recession, or we're in one now, we just don't know it yet. Do we have an emergency budget in place that we can shift our spending habits to? Does that mean we eat at home more and eat out less? That could be one thing. Do you change other things you do? Do you go on vacation less? You know, these are things that come to mind right away. But can we trim that normal time budget down and save a little bit more? And one of the cool things,
Yeah.
Jump in, John.
No. Keep going. I have thoughts, but keep going.
One of the things that's like really cool about that is once you cut back on the spending a little bit, the savings go up. Then you get to take advantage of one of the great things about recessions is generally the market dips a bit. And if the market dips, you can invest, you can rebalance. And that kind of leads into the other thing that we can do.
Yeah. Before we go into the other thing that we can do, though, back to the savings and spending, it's funny. I was just talking to a friend of mine and he was like, you know, have you I was at the store the other day and I went to buy chicken breast and he's like, it was just so expensive. And so he decided in that moment, he's like, we're buying chicken thighs now. And he's like, it's great for me because I actually I like chicken thighs and they're like the cheapest thing you can get as a part of the chicken. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe someone can fact check us on that. But I thought that was really interesting to hear him say that. And this whole idea of an emergency budget or a crisis budget, you know, Michael and I on the pre-calls, we were kind of discussing what we were going to talk about today. You know, I kind of said, well, you know, having an emergency an emergency reserve, an emergency fund. We all know, we've heard 3 to 6 months. If you're in retirement, maybe it's more, maybe it's less, whatever. Everyone's situation is unique, but the conversation and what Michael brought up was like, well, if we're talking about, like, hypothetically, if we're in one or we're in uncertain times now, and we haven't done that thing and we haven't prepared to have that savings, that emergency savings, what's the next step of like proactiveness that we can take? Because we assume like we need to all check that box and we know that. Well, that's true. But I think also having a crisis budget, an emergency budget, as Michael shared, and listen, it's not even necessarily something you need to activate now. Your personal circumstances will dictate that. But like my wife and I, as much as budgeting is not a fun part of our conversations in our life together, we have it and we talk about those things, and we know, like Michael said, you have a budget for the normal times and you have a budget for the crisis times. And in that event, we can pretty much activate that. Like if we need to, we've already done the work to prepare it. And for some folks, it's literally just putting pen to a paper. Like, where am I going to reduce spending? And there's some logical ones, like maybe, like you said, maybe I'll not eat out as much and we'll prepare dinner, or maybe I'll buy chicken thighs instead of chicken breasts. But there's all sorts of ways to get creative with that. And I think that's really important. And Michael, as you were kind of going into the next topic, which let's move there. Then if we do have our emergency savings and we do have a crisis budget in place so that we can activate it if we need to, then what is that next area in our life that we have total control over, do you think?
The other thing that we can have total control over is what we consider like our asset allocation, or more simply put, like what we buy and how much we buy of different things, and meaning stocks versus bonds. So, John, this, when you set up a financial plan, you generally set it up with an asset allocation that's going to take you ideally through market cycles. The market's not always going to go up, and you build a plan to withstand the ups and downs. But one of the things that happens in a recession generally, if the market drops a bit, that asset allocation comes out of balance, because the stocks go down, the bonds should go up. And now your 70-30 looks like a 60-40. And a lot of times that may be okay, and you may not want to do anything. But recessions often present opportunities to rebalance and to change that asset allocation back to where it should be. And that just consists of potentially, depending on, again, everyone's situation is different, selling some bonds to go buy more equities. And generally that can be an extremely scary thing if you're forced to do that in the moment and you haven't thought about that ahead of time. Because, the markets are going down, it's hard to buy that and buy it with confidence. But if you've built that into your plan and you know that, hey, the market's dropped 10 to 15%, we have this built in our plan. We know that when we go from 70-30 to 60-40, we're going to buy back to 70-30. We're going to take advantage of that dip. And those are some things and some ways to rebalance the account. Do you have any more thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. It's really having that plan in place, having an investment approach in place, so that in times of uncertainty, because I think it feels counterintuitive to most folks, and this is just the psychology of money and the emotion of money. When the stock market or whatever is doing well and things are going high, it feels like, oh man, I should be adding to that. I want to keep doing that. And when things are not doing so well, you feel, and obviously there's a difference between a recession and a bear market. But when things are not doing well in the stock market, you feel like, oh man, I need to cut and run. I want to get out of this. And so it kind of feels counterintuitive. But rebalancing the portfolio, if you have that mandate in place and you say, okay, whatever that is, the 70-30 is the target, hypothetically speaking, and we're now below that because equities have gone down, by rebalancing, the very nature of rebalancing is forcing yourself to buy low and sell high. You're not, you're removing, I think, the emotion out of that, and you've pre-planned that because you've had those discussions and you've prepared, like, hey, this is the portfolio we want, and this thing called portfolio drift happens, where when certain sectors do better than others, then the portfolio allocations change, and we need to make sure that we're rebalancing that. And I think that's one of the proactive things that we can be doing. Have the plan in place so that when the time comes, you're not you're not also trying to decide emotionally, like dealing with that emotion of like, oh my gosh, is this a good time to be doing that rebalance? You've already had those discussions and
Yeah.
thoughts.
You actually said something before this recording. We were talking about talking about this plan, and you used the word decisive. Putting this plan in place allows you to act decisively to make that. You remove the emotions out of it, and you just say, "Okay, markets pulled back. It's time to buy. Let's do it." And you
Yeah.
also hit on another thing that happens a lot of times in recessions with asset allocation and rebalancing is people get concerned maybe about their job and they want to save a little bit more money. So they stop contributing to their 401k or they stop contributing to their investment accounts because they're concerned that the value is just going to go down. And while it can feel good to have a little bit more cash on hand and everyone's situation could be different, and maybe that's the thing you need to do, most of the time it feels like you should just keep contributing through this cycle and you get to buy those lows and you're just sticking to your plan. When
Yeah.
you deviate from that, that can be a major misstep. And just wanted to point that out that in the recessions, generally, you just want to keep buying in just like you were before. Stick to the plan. You're going to come out the other side so much better.
Yeah, man, that's such a good point because, there's so much as we've discussed over the last 10 minutes or so, just emotion that comes with, like, I've always told clients, it just, when you see losses in your portfolio, there is a visceral feeling to that. Like when the markets
Mhm.
go up and you check a statement or you log in and look at it, you're like, oh, cool, great. That's what it was supposed to do. It went up. But when they
Yep.
go down, there's this visceral feeling of like, what? I can't believe this. What's going on? And so part of what we try to do is be very proactive in those conversations so
Mhm.
that, because we know there's periods of expansion and contraction, like it's not always just all rise, which I think you kind of shared in your second video of this play of our YouTube playlist with this. And so, again, kind of recognizing that when times are good, so that when times are not good, okay, you know what? I've got this plan. Like we're laser focused. Nothing's changed in our life. We're going to continue to do the things that we can control. And if things have changed as a result of what's going on in your life, then we can still focus on our crisis budget, having an emergency savings, the saving and the spending stuff too. So I think there's
Yep.
so much that ties into all of this stuff, but it really, the conversation for us is, what are the things that you can control in your life, and really staying laser focused on that. And more than anything, the ability to maintain your long term perspective. Even if someone just entered retirement, there's potentially 20, 30 plus years in your retirement life cycle. And in that time frame, we're going to statistically go through periods of recession, and
Mhm.
that's going to be kind of a normal thing with expansion and contraction. So obviously, we love talking about this stuff, and we're excited to, in between meetings and calls and things, reach our clients in a different kind of way, and that's why we do this. So if you have any follow up questions, or you want to have a conversation with us, feel free to reach out. John at candorpath.com, Michael at candorpath.com. And Matt's not with us today, Matt at candorpath.com. You guys know how to find us. So thanks as always for listening to us, and stay tuned for the next one. See you guys.
See ya.